The red dirt crunched under Daniel Reed's worn sneakers as he made his way home through the Australian scrubland. 12 years old and stick-thin, he carried a backpack full of library books borrowed from town. Beside him, silent as a shadow, padded Ratchet. The honey badger kept pace with the boy, occasionally sniffing at interesting rocks or patches of earth. Daniel had no idea that eyes watched him from above. Far beyond the clouds, beyond the atmosphere itself, a ship hung in orbit. Inside that vessel, 6 members of an alien species called the Collective studied their screens with professional interest. Commander Breel tapped his datapad with one long finger. His species had 4 arms, gray skin, and eyes that could see into the infrared spectrum. Right now, those eyes focused on the small human walking across the Australian outback. "This one fits all parameters," Breel said to his team. "Young, isolated, lives with only one elderly guardian. The dwelling is 20 minutes from the nearest neighbor by human ground transport." Second Officer Trell nodded her agreement. She pulled up Daniel's file on the shared screen. The Collective had been gathering information on humans for months now, quietly accessing their primitive internet and satellite systems. Daniel Reed lived with his grandfather on a small homestead. Homeschooled, rarely went into populated areas. "Perfect. The extraction should be simple," Trell said. "Standard stun field, transport beam, departure. We can be off-planet in under 10 minutes." Breel zoomed in on the image of Daniel. The boy was laughing at something, talking to the animal beside him. The creature registered on their sensors as a Malivera capensis. Their database pulled up the basic information. Scavenger, 10 kilograms, minimal threat level. "What about the companion animal?" asked Nim, one of the soldiers. He was young for this kind of work, still cautious. Breel dismissed the concern with a wave. "Our scans show it's a simple Earth mammal, non-aggressive species. The database classifies it as a scavenger of no concern. It won't interfere." The team had performed 47 successful extractions on Earth already. They took samples, studied human genetics, and returned their subjects with memories carefully adjusted. Earth's governments had no idea the Collective existed. The operation was smooth, scientific, and completely covert. "Schedule the extraction for tomorrow evening," Breel ordered. "The target follows the same route every day at approximately 1800 hours local time. We'll position along his path through the uninhabited zone." Down on Earth, Daniel had no knowledge of the discussion happening miles above his head. He was too busy trying to keep Ratchet from digging up a rabbit burrow. The honey badger had strong opinions about rabbits and even stronger claws for pursuing them. "Come on, Ratch," Daniel said, tugging gently at the animal. "Grandpa will have dinner ready soon." Ratchet gave the burrow one last interested sniff, then followed Daniel. The badger had been with the boy for 3 years now. Daniel's grandfather found Ratchet as an orphan kit, probably separated from its mother by dingoes or snakes. Every wildlife expert they contacted said the same thing. Honey badgers don't make good pets. They're aggressive, territorial, and basically impossible to domesticate. Ratchet apparently never got that message. The badger attached itself to Daniel and refused to leave. After a few weeks of the animal sleeping outside Daniel's bedroom door and following him everywhere, Grandfather Reed gave up trying to relocate it. Ratchet became part of the family. The homestead came into view as they crested a small hill. It wasn't much, just a weathered house, a few sheds, and some chicken coops. Daniel's grandfather raised chickens and did odd mechanical work for nearby farms. They didn't have much money, but they had enough. "Daniel," his grandfather's voice carried across the yard. The old man stood on the porch, one hand shading his eyes against the setting sun. "You're late. I was about to come looking for you." "Sorry, Grandpa. Got caught up reading at the library." Grandfather Reed was 80 years old, with skin like leather from decades in the Australian sun. He'd fought in 2 wars, worked on oil rigs, and raised Daniel since the boy was 4. His parents died in a car accident. Grandpa was all Daniel had. "Ratchet's been acting strange today," the old man said as Daniel climbed the porch steps. "Real alert. Keeps looking at the sky." Daniel glanced down at the honey badger. Now that Grandpa mentioned it, Ratchet did seem tense. The animal's small eyes scanned the horizon constantly, and a low rumble occasionally vibrated through its chest. Maybe he smells dingoes, Daniel suggested. Maybe. Grandpa didn't sound convinced. He learned to trust his instincts over the years, and something fell off. He just couldn't identify what. They went inside for dinner. Ratchet followed, but positioned himself near the door, still alert. The badger barely touched his food, which was unusual. Ratchet normally ate like every meal might be his last. Up in orbit, Breel finalized a mission plan. 4 team members would deploy: himself, Trell, Nim, and a soldier named Gorsh. They'd tested their stun weapons on Earth mammals before. The settings were calibrated perfectly. The boy would drop unconscious within seconds. They'd collect him, return to the ship, and complete their research. Simple. Routine. Just another extraction. Breel looked at the image of Daniel one more time. The boy was reading a book now, sitting on his porch with a small animal beside him. Harmless. Easy. The commander felt confident about tomorrow's operation, but he had no idea that the simple scavenger sitting next to Daniel was about to teach the collective a lesson they would never forget. Honey badgers had a reputation on Earth, one that didn't translate well into alien databases. They were known as the most fearless animals on the planet. They fought lions. They raided beehives despite thousands of stings. They survived cobra bites that would kill animals 3 times their size. And they absolutely, positively did not abandon their family when threatened. Breel would learn all of this the hard way. Tomorrow evening, when his team descended to grab one 12-year-old boy, they would discover that Earth's deadliest creatures didn't always come in large packages. Sometimes they came in 10-kilogram bundles of fury with jaws that never let go and a complete inability to understand the concept of retreat. The collective had chosen Daniel Reed for capture because he seemed vulnerable and alone. They were right about vulnerable. They were catastrophically wrong about alone. Daniel had Ratchet, and that would make all the difference. Daniel walked his usual route the next evening, completely unaware that death machines orbited above him. The sun hung low on the horizon, painting the scrubland in shades of orange and gold. Ratchet stayed closer than normal, almost pressed against Daniel's leg point 2 kilometers from home. The extraction craft descended. It remained cloaked, invisible to human eyes and their primitive radar. Inside, Commander Breel checked his team's equipment one final time. "Stun weapons charged?" he asked. "Confirmed," Trell replied. She adjusted her helmet, checking the seal. "Standard procedure for planetary operations. Containment field generator ready," Nim reported. The young soldier seemed nervous, but that was normal for early career operatives. Gorsh, the 4th team member, simply grunted his readiness. He was a veteran of dozens of extractions across multiple planets. This was routine work. The craft settled into position 30 meters from Daniel's walking path. The team deployed silently, taking positions in the scrub brush. They'd done this so many times the movements were automatic. Breel crouched behind a rock outcropping. Trell moved to the opposite side of the path. Nim and Gorsh flanked the planned capture zone. Daniel walked into view, talking quietly to Ratchet about a book he'd finished. The honey badger's ears were flat against its skull, and that low rumble vibrated constantly through its chest now. Something was very wrong. Ratchet could smell things humans couldn't, sense electromagnetic fields that Daniel's nervous system ignored. "Target in position," Breel whispered into his communicator. "Activate stun field on my mark. 3, 2, 1. Mark." The air itself seemed to shimmer. An invisible wave of energy swept across the path, calibrated to disrupt human neural activity. Daniel's eyes rolled back, and he collapsed like someone had cut his strings. His backpack hit the dirt, books spilling out. The collective team moved in immediately. Nim and Gorsh approached first, reaching for the unconscious boy. Everything was proceeding exactly according to plan. Then Ratchet moved. The honey badger didn't freeze in confusion. It didn't run away in fear. The stun field washed over it, and Ratchet shook its head once, like clearing water from its ears. The badger's metabolism processed the energy differently than the collective's database predicted. Whatever effect the field had, it wasn't enough. Ratchet saw Daniel fall, saw strange creatures approaching its boy. and decided that absolutely could not happen. Gorsh never saw it coming. 1 second he was reaching for Daniel. The next, a small, furry missile slammed into his leg with the force of a sledgehammer. Ratchet's jaws clamped down on the flexible joint of his armor, the one weak point where mobility required thinner material. The soldier's scream cut through the quiet scrubland. Honey badgers have a bite force of over 600 kilograms per square inch, concentrated in a jaw that evolution designed to crack bones and tear through hide. The armor, designed to stop energy weapons and blunt force, had never been tested against an Earth predator's specialized bite that it cracked. Gorsh fell, trying desperately to shake the animal off. Ratchet held on with a grip that made its species famous. Once a honey badger's jaws locked, nothing short of death made them let go. Nim spun and fired his stun weapon. The energy blast hit Ratchet directly in the side. The badger's thick, loose skin absorbed most of the impact. The rest of the charge scattered across Ratchet's famously resistant nervous system. The animal had evolved to survive cobra venom and bee stings by the thousand. A stun blast designed for creatures with completely different biology barely registered. Ratchet released Gorsh and pivoted toward Nim with frightening speed. The badger could turn almost completely around inside its own skin, a flexibility that made it nearly impossible to pin down. Nim fired again. Ratchet dodged, incredibly, and closed the distance. "Back up, now!" Breel shouted into his communicator. This wasn't possible. A 10-kilogram scavenger was defeating trained soldiers. The commander's career flashed before his eyes. The 2 remaining team members deployed from the ship. That made 6 armed aliens against 1 honey badger. It should have been overwhelming force that it wasn't. Ratchet fought like nothing the collective had ever encountered. The badger went for eyes through helmet visors, clawed at environmental suit seals, and attacked from angles their combat training never covered. Most species fought with weapons, tactics, and self-preservation instincts. Ratchet fought with teeth, claws, and absolutely zero fear of death. Trell tried to grab the animal from behind. Ratchet spun inside its skin and bit down on her arm. The suit's breech alarm screamed. She staggered back, desperately trying to seal the tear before the Earth's atmosphere contaminated her system. Breel fired his sidearm, a more powerful weapon than the standard stun rifles. The blast caught Ratchet full in the chest. The badger flew backward, hit the ground, and rolled to its feet. Smoke rose from singed fur. The animal shook itself and charged again. "This is insane," Nim shouted. "What is this creature?" "Abort." Breel made the decision he'd been dreading. "Fall back to the ship. Leave the target." "But Commander, we're so close." "That's an order. Move." The team retreated in disorder, 3 of them seriously injured, 1 suit compromised. Ratchet pursued them for 50 meters before stopping, as if satisfied they were actually leaving. The extraction craft lifted off, cloaking system straining to hide its hasty departure. Inside, Breel stared at the image of Daniel, still lying unconscious on the ground, with that small animal now standing guard over him. "What just happened?" Trell asked, clutching her damaged arm. Nobody had an answer. They'd just lost an operation to a creature that weighed less than most of their equipment. It defied every calculation, every tactical assessment, every assumption they'd made about Earth's fauna. Below, Daniel groaned and opened his eyes. His head felt like someone had stuffed it with cotton. Ratchet was there immediately, licking his face, making small, worried sounds. The badger was burned and bleeding from multiple energy weapon hits, but stayed focused on Daniel. "What happened, Ratch?" Daniel asked groggily. He noticed his books scattered everywhere, noticed the strange scorch marks on the ground around him, noticed Ratchet's injuries. Something had happened, something bad. And somehow his honey badger had protected him from IT in orbit. Breel filed the most humiliating report of his career, knowing it would probably end his command. Mission Director Hal Van read it 3 times. Unable to believe what he was seeing, they'd lost to a badger. A small Earth badger had defeated 6 trained soldiers. Mission Director Hal Van stared at Commander Breel across the briefing room table. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Finally, Hal Van spoke. "A badger." "Yes, Director." You're telling me that 6 trained operatives, equipped with advanced weapons and armor, were defeated by a common Earth scavenger. Briel wanted to argue, to explain that there was nothing common about that creature. But the facts were damning enough without excuses. Yes, Director. Halvan pulled up the combat footage on the main screen. Watching Ratchet fight was even more disturbing the second time. The creature moved with a combination of fury and calculation that shouldn't exist in an animal that size. It targeted weak points, adapted to threats, and simply refused to stop. Our xenobiologists missed something, Halvan said finally. Get them in here. I want to know everything about this species. The research team arrived within the hour. They've been frantically reviewing every piece of data they could find about honey badgers since Briel's failed mission. What they discovered was troubling. Director, the lead biologist, began. Our initial classification was based on limited dietary analysis. We labeled them as scavengers because they consume carrion. We missed their actual ecological role, which is apex mesopredator. They hunt venomous snakes, raid fortified insect colonies, and routinely steal kills from animals 5 times their size. They're listed in human records as the most fearless animal on their planet. Halvan watched the footage again. Ratchet attacking Gorsh, surviving multiple stun blasts, pursuing armed soldiers. Why didn't our stun weapons work? Their skin is unusually thick and loose. Energy weapons designed for species with tight dermal layers simply can't deliver full effect. Additionally, their metabolism processes toxins at an accelerated rate. They've evolved resistance to some of the deadliest venoms on Earth. And their behavior. The biologist hesitated. Director, honey badgers have virtually no fear response. They don't retreat from superior force. They don't recognize threats as overwhelming. If you threaten something they're protecting, they attack. Period. Halvan felt a headache forming behind his primary eyes. The boy. The creature was protecting the boy. Yes, human records show honey badgers are largely solitary, but in rare cases they've bonded with humans. This appears to be one of those cases. Briel cleared his throat. Director, request permission to attempt extraction again. With proper preparation. Proper preparation? Halvan's voice rose. You want to commit more resources to capturing one human child? My reputation. Your reputation is the least of our concerns right now, Commander. Halvan pulled up a star map. We have extraction quotas across 3 sectors. Every team is watching to see how we handle this failure. If we slink away, we look weak. If we return with overwhelming force and still fail, we look incompetent. The room fell silent. Finally, Halvan made his decision. One more attempt, but this time we do it properly. 10 soldiers, heavy tranquilizers, combat drones, and a mobile containment unit. We neutralize the animal first, then extract the target. Briel straightened. Thank you, Director. I won't fail again. You better not. Because if you do, you'll be counting asteroids and empty systems for the rest of your career. Back on Earth, Daniel sat in the veterinary clinic while Dr. Sarah Chun examined Ratchet. The badger tolerated the examination with bad grace, growling whenever the vet touched a sore spot. These burns are unusual, Dr. Chun said, studying the marks on Ratchet's side. I've never seen anything like them. You said you found Daniel unconscious in the scrubland. Daniel's grandfather nodded. The boy doesn't remember what happened. Just woke up with a splitting headache and Ratchet injured like this. Dr. Chun applied antibiotic ointment to the burns. They looked almost like electrical burns, but the pattern was wrong. And the scorch marks Daniel's grandfather described at the scene didn't match any natural phenomenon she knew. I want to keep Ratchet overnight for observation, she said. No. The word came from Daniel, quiet but firm. Ratchet stays with me. Daniel, the animal needs Ratchet. Stays. With me. Something in the boy's voice made Dr. Chun reconsider. She'd known Daniel since he was small. He wasn't usually stubborn like this. She looked at the honey badger, who was staring at Daniel with unusual focus. The animal clearly didn't want to be separated either. Fine, but you bring him back tomorrow for a follow-up. That evening, Grandfather Reed made 2 phone calls. The first went to Roy Patterson, an old Army buddy who lived in our north. The second went to Garrett Mills, another veteran who owed grandfather Reed his life from a firefight in Vietnam. "I need you boys to come down here," grandfather Reed said. "Something happened to Daniel. I don't know what, but my gut says it's not over." Roy and Garrett didn't ask questions. They'd learned to trust the old man's instincts decades ago. They arrived before midnight, both bringing hunting rifles and the kind of alertness that never quite left old soldiers. The three men sat on the porch, drinking coffee and watching the stars. Ratchet prowled the perimeter of the yard, still agitated. "What are we looking for?" Roy asked. "Don't know yet," grandfather Reed admitted. "But those marks in the dirt where I found Daniel, perfect circles of dead grass. Scorch patterns that don't match lightning or fire or anything natural." And Ratchet keeps watching the sky. Garrett followed the badger's gaze upward. "You thinking what I think you're thinking?" "I'm not thinking anything specific. Just preparing." They spent the next day making preparations. Electric fences got repositioned. Motion sensors from Garrett's hunting setup got installed around the property perimeter. Roy rigged spotlights to motion triggers. None of it was military grade, but they were working with what they had. Daniel watched the activity with growing awareness. "Grandpa, what's going on?" The old man knelt down to his grandson's level. "Remember when I taught you about being prepared? How it's better to be ready for nothing than unprepared for something." "Yeah, we're being prepared. That's all." High above, the collective's tactical team assembled. 10 soldiers checked their equipment. Combat drones ran system diagnostics. Tranquilizer rounds got loaded, powerful enough to drop an elephant instantly. Breel addressed his team. "Subdue the animal first. That's priority one. Once it's contained, the extraction will be simple." They'd analyzed every second of the previous encounter. They had countermeasures for Ratchet's bite, tactics for its speed, heavy enough tranquilizers to overcome its resistance. This time, they were ready, or so they thought. The collective's assault began at dusk. 10 soldiers in heavy armor descended in a tight formation, supported by 4 combat drones equipped with sensors and weapons. They weren't subtle this time. The mission parameters had changed from covert extraction to overwhelming force. Inside the homestead, the motion sensors triggered first. Lights flooded the yard, turning evening into artificial day. Roy grabbed his rifle and moved to the window. "We've got company," he said quietly. Grandfather Reed killed the interior lights and joined him. Through the window, he saw them. Not clearly, just shimmers in the air, distortions that moved with purpose. His combat experience recognized a tactical approach when he saw one. "Garrett, get Daniel to the back room. Roy, you take the east side. I'll cover west." "Where are we shooting at?" Garrett asked, already moving. "Whatever comes through that door." The aliens surrounded the homestead in a textbook pattern. Breel commanded from a ship, watching through multiple camera feeds. This time he wasn't taking chances. "Deploy the knockout gas," he ordered. "Flood the structure. We'll collect them when they're unconscious." Canisters flew through windows, hissing as they released their contents. The gas was designed to work on Earth's atmospheric composition, guaranteed to render humans unconscious within seconds. Ratchet was outside. The honey badger had slipped through its pet door the moment the lights came on. Now it moved through the darkness beyond the floodlights, tracking by scent and sound. The badger could smell the aliens, a sharp metallic scent mixed with something organic and raw. Could hear their communication devices crackling. The first soldier Ratchet encountered was checking a drone sensor feed, distracted. The badger hit him low, going for the knee joint. The alien's startled shout turned into a scream as Ratchet's claws found purchase in the armor gap. "Contact! The creature is outside the perimeter." The soldier tried to shake Ratchet off. Bad idea. Honey badgers didn't shake off point. 2 more soldiers converged on their companion's position. They had the heavy tranquilizers loaded, doses calculated to drop a grizzly bear. The first dart hit Ratchet in the shoulder. The second caught the badger in the hindquarter. Enough sedative to kill a large human pumped into Ratchet's system. The badger slowed. Its movements became less precise. But it didn't stop. The animal's metabolism was already processing the chemicals, burning through them faster than the collective's biologists thought possible. A third dart hit. Ratchet staggered, finally releasing the first soldier. The badger's legs wobbled. Victory seemed certain. Then Ratchet shook its head violently and charged the nearest soldier. "How is it still moving?" one of them shouted. "Doesn't matter. Contain it." They deployed an energy cage, the same type that failed before, but reinforced. Ratchet threw itself against the barrier with such force that the generator sparked. The badger snarled, bit at the energy field, tried to dig under it. The sedatives were clearly affecting it now, but pure stubborn fury kept the animal fighting. Inside the house, the knockout gas wasn't working as planned. Grandfather Reed had wet towels ready, crude gas masks that bought them precious seconds. He stumbled to the back room, where Daniel huddled with Garrett. "They're here for you, boy," the old man said. "Don't know who they are or what they want, but they're not taking you." Through the walls, they heard Ratchet's snarls and the alien shouts. Daniel's hands clenched into fists. "Ratchet's fighting them. That badger's buying us time. Don't waste it." Grandfather Reed had one more card to play. He'd rigged an old military emergency beacon to his radio setup, a relic from his service days. It broadcast on every frequency the equipment could manage, a desperate cry for help that human authorities might notice. He triggered at point 30 kilometers away. An Australian Air Force base picked up the signal. It was primitive, barely more than static with a pattern, but it appeared on their screens alongside something else. Radar returns that shouldn't exist. Large object in low orbit. Smaller craft descending. "Sir, we're picking up unidentified aerial activity." The base commander looked at the readings and made a decision that would change everything. "Scramble fighters. 2 jets. Investigate and report." Breel watched the mission falling apart in real time. His soldiers had the animal contained, but 3 were injured in the process. The humans inside the house weren't unconscious. And now his sensors detected military aircraft approaching fast. "Commander, human air defense is responding. We have 2 fighters inbound for minutes to intercept range." This was the nightmare scenario. First contact with Earth's military, all because of one stubborn child and his impossibly dangerous pet. Breel's career was already destroyed. Now the entire covert research program was at risk. Abort mission. All units return to ship. Now. "But Commander, we're so close." "The target is right there." "I gave you an order. Fall back immediately." The soldiers began their retreat, but it wasn't clean. Roy had gotten brave enough to take shots through the window, forcing the aliens to maintain their shields at full power. That made them visible, shimmering outlines against the floodlights. The soldier carrying Ratchet's containment unit stumbled over the electric fence wire, dropped the unit, and watched in horror as it cracked against a rock. The energy field flickered, weakened. Ratchet, sedated and wounded, still found the strength to force its way through the compromised barrier. The badger squeezed through a gap barely large enough, driven by one simple thought: get back to Daniel. The aliens were running now, heading for their extraction craft. Ratchet pursued, on unsteady legs, snarling at their heels. The image was absurd and terrifying in equal measure. Armed soldiers fleeing from a drugged, injured animal that refused to quit. The first jet arrived as the alien craft lifted off. The pilot's gun camera captured everything. Shimmering vessels, armored figures retreating, and clearly visible in the homestead's floodlights, a small honey badger chasing them. "Base, this is Eagle One. You're not going to believe what I'm seeing." The footage would be classified within hours, but not before multiple people saw it. Not before it got copied, backed up, and eventually leaked. The Australian government would demand answers. Other nations would ask questions. The collective's covert operation on Earth was over, ended not by human technology or military might, but by one family's refusal to surrender and one badger's absolute inability to quit in the homestead. Grandfather Reed watched the shimmers disappear into the sky. Roy and Garrett stood beside him, rifles still raised. Daniel came out of the back room and found Ratchet collapsed on the porch, breathing but unconscious from the massive sedative dose. The boy sat down and pulled his badger into his lap. "You saved me again," he whispered. Above them, stars glittered in the gathering darkness. Somewhere up there, An alien commander was realizing his career was over. An entire research program was being shut down. A species' assumptions about Earth were being violently corrected, all because they chose the wrong boy to capture. The leaked footage hit the internet within 48 hours. Someone at the Air Force Base copied it before the classification order came down. Within days, the video spread across every social media platform on Earth. Shimmering alien vessels, armored figures, a honey badger chasing them off. The world's governments could deny a lot of things. They couldn't deny gun camera footage from a military jet. Australian officials arrived at the Reed homestead in a convoy of black vehicles. Men in suits, military personnel, and scientists all wanted to talk to Daniel. Grandfather Reed met them on the porch with his rifle across his knees and a look that said they'd need warrants for anything more than conversation. The boy's been through enough, he told the lead official, a woman named Patricia Wells from Australian intelligence. You want to talk, we talk out here. He's not going anywhere with you. Wells was smart enough to recognize a man who'd die before backing down. We're not here to take him. We need to understand what happened. Daniel told his story. The blackouts, waking up with strange burns and scorch marks around him. Ratchet's injuries. The second attack on their home. The old man told his part about the perfect circles of dead grass, the shimmering shapes, the way his emergency beacon brought the jets. Roy and Garrett backed up every word. 3 military veterans, all describing the same impossible events. The physical evidence supported them. Scorch marks that didn't match any terrestrial weapon. Chemical residue from a knockout gas that human science couldn't fully identify. And most convincing, the fragments of alien technology left behind when the combat drones were destroyed in the fighting. Other countries are reporting similar incidents, Wells said. Unexplained disappearances in remote areas. People with missing time and strange injuries. We think this has been going on for months, maybe longer. Why Daniel? Grandfather Reed asked. Why my grandson? Best guess? He fit their target profile. Young, isolated, easy to take without causing alarm. Wells looked at Ratchet, who was recovering in Daniel's lap with the stubborn resilience of his species. They didn't account for him. The honey badger had become famous. News programs showed the footage on repeat. A 10-kilogram animal chasing off an alien invasion force. It was absurd, inspiring, and very human. Social media exploded with honey badger memes, jokes about Earth's secret weapon, and demands to make Ratchet an official military mascot. But behind the humor, the world was terrified. If aliens had been quietly abducting people, what else were they doing? What do they want? Were they coming back? The United Nations called an emergency session. Every space-capable nation accelerated their programs. Defense budgets received blank checks. Satellite networks were redesigned to watch for orbital threats. Humanity had learned it wasn't alone in the universe, and the neighbors weren't friendly. In orbit above Earth, the collective's command structure was having its own crisis. Mission Director Hal Van faced a tribunal of his superiors, all demanding to know how a covert research operation became an interplanetary incident. The operation was compromised by unforeseen variables, Hal Van said, knowing how weak it sounded. Unforeseen. The senior director pulled up footage of Ratchet fighting 9 soldiers simultaneously. This creature is listed in your initial survey as a non-threat. Your team had access to human databases. The information about honey badgers was freely available. You simply didn't bother to look deeper. Halvin had no defense. The research team's failure to properly assess Earth's fauna was inexcusable. Worse, the decision to attempt a second extraction after the first failed had been his. The Earth program is terminated, the senior director announced. All operations, all research, all observation. The planet is now classified as restricted. No collective vessel will approach within 10 light hours without explicit authorization. Sir, with respect, we have years of research invested, which is now worthless because the humans know we exist. Your agents left technology fragments behind. Human scientists are already analyzing them. You've accelerated their development by decades and made them hostile to extraterrestrial contact. This is a disaster. The decision rippled through the collective's entire structure. Earth was now a problem planet. Too primitive to contact openly, too advanced to ignore, and demonstrably more dangerous than anyone anticipated. Commander Briel received his new assignment via official channels. Mineral surveying in empty systems. No crew, no tactical operations, just decades of scanning lifeless rocks for trace elements. Career death by boredom that he spent his last day on the command ship reviewing the footage of both failed operations, trying to understand where it all went wrong. The answer kept coming back to the same thing. They'd underestimated everything about Earth. Back on the planet, Daniel's life transformed in ways he'd never wanted. Government security followed him everywhere. Scientists requested interviews. Documentary crews wanted to film his daily routine. He hated all of it. The only good part was that everyone finally understood what he'd known all along. Ratchet was special. Not because of genetics or training, but because the Badger had chosen to protect him, and nothing in the universe could change that decision. Dr. Chun, the veterinarian, received requests from research facilities worldwide wanting to study Ratchet. Grandfather Reed's response to every request was the same. The animal's not a lab specimen. It's family. That response got quoted in news articles, shared on social media, and became a rallying point. Humans didn't just use animals as tools. They bonded with them, loved them, considered them family members worth protecting. The collective xenobiologists added this observation to their growing file on humanity. It wasn't just the Badger that was dangerous. It was the relationship, the way humans inspired loyalty in other species, the way they protected their own with absolute disregard for personal safety. 6 months after the incident, the collective's ruling council issued a formal directive regarding Earth. The planet was classified as emerging hostile, extreme risk. The official reasoning cited primitive but rapidly advancing technology and unpredictable defensive capabilities. The unofficial reason, shared quietly among collective military academies, was simpler. They lost to a Badger. If humans could bond with creatures that fearless and inspire that level of protective fury, what would they be like when they reached the stars themselves? Better to watch from a distance and wait. Wait to see if humanity destroyed itself, or if it became the galaxy's next dominant species. Either way, the collective wanted no part of finding out the hard way. On Earth, Daniel finally convinced the government security to give him some space. He walked through his familiar scrubland with Ratchet beside him, both of them scarred but healing. The boy looked up at the stars and wondered if they were still watching. They were. And they were learning to be very, very careful about which planets they chose to visit. 2 years passed. Daniel turned 15 and finally convinced the authorities he didn't need constant security. The world had moved on to other concerns, though alien defense remained a priority for every major government. Satellites watched the skies. Deep space radar networks scanned for approaching vessels. Humanity was ready this time. The Reed homestead returned to something like normal. Tourists still occasionally drove out hoping to see the famous Badger, but Grandfather Reed ran them off with the same efficiency he showed government officials. Life settled into routine. Daniel walked the same scrubland paths he'd always walked. Ratchet, older now and a bit slower, still accompanied him everywhere. The honey badger had scars from energy weapons that veterinary science couldn't fully explain. The burns had healed in strange patterns, and Ratchet's fur never quite grew back normally over them. Battle scars from a war most people still didn't quite believe happened. High above, a collective observation post maintained its distant watch. The vessel stayed well outside Earth's detection range, monitoring from light hours away. Young Officer Crendon studied the data feeds with the intensity of someone who'd grown up hearing stories about the Badger incident. Still no signs of aggression from the planet. She reported to her commander, Commander Velis, a veteran who'd served during the Earth program, nodded. They're busy preparing defenses. 5 new satellite networks launched this month alone. Their space programs have accelerated dramatically, all because of one failed extraction. One failed extraction that taught us everything we needed to know about humanity. Velis pulled up educational files that every collective officer now studied. Watch this. The footage played. Ratchet fighting 9 soldiers. The Badger refusing to quit despite injuries and sedatives. Pursuing armored aliens until they fled. The creature weighs 11 kilograms, Vela said. It has no ranged weapons, no technology, no understanding of military strategy. It won through sheer refusal to accept defeat. I've seen the footage before, sir. Have you understood it, though? That animal was protecting a human child. Not for food, not for territory, but because they'd bonded. Human beings form those bonds with hundreds of species. Dogs, cats, horses, birds. Even creatures like honey badgers that their own experts say can't be domesticated. Crendon studied the frozen image of Ratchet mid-charge. And when they reach the stars, they'll bring those bonds with them. Imagine human soldiers with companions like that. Imagine ships where the crew considers each other family and fights with that same intensity. We calculated we'd need 3-to-1 numerical superiority to have even odds against a human military force. And that's assuming they don't find even more dangerous species to befriend. The observation post's mission was simple: watch and report. Don't engage, don't approach, don't interact. Earth was quarantined not because it was weak, but because it was potentially too strong. Former Commander Briel, now 3 years into his asteroid surveying assignment, received a communication from Collective Military Command. They wanted him to lecture at the Academy about the Earth operation. Specifically, what not to do when encountering an unknown species that he accepted. What else could he do? His career was destroyed anyway. Might as well let others learn from his mistakes. Standing before a classroom of young officers, Briel showed them the footage they'd all seen before. But he added context. I made 3 critical errors, he told them. First, I trusted our database without verification. Second, I underestimated the target's protective relationships. Third, I escalated when I should have withdrawn. A student raised their hand. Sir, the creature was just an animal. Couldn't you have brought heavier weapons? We did. The second operation had enough firepower to level the homestead. Do you know what stopped us? Briel paused. Human military response. Their primitive jets arrived because the target's guardian triggered an emergency beacon. We faced a choice: complete the mission and risk open conflict with Earth's governments, or abort. And the animal was still fighting when we left, sedated with enough drugs to kill it 3 times over, and it was still protecting the boy. Briel pulled up the final footage, the image that haunted his dreams. That's what Earth is. Every species, they're evolved in competition. Their predators are efficient. Their prey animals are resilient. And humans somehow convinced dozens of those species to become partners. The classroom fell silent. Finally, another student spoke. What do we do if they expand into space? We hope they're friendly. And we never, ever threaten their family. On Earth, Daniel sat on his porch with Ratchet beside him. The honey badger was dozing in the afternoon sun, twitching occasionally in dreams. Daniel wondered what badgers dreamed about. Probably digging or eating or fighting things. His grandfather joined him, moving slower these days but still sharp. College applications ready? Almost. Thinking about veterinary school. Because of Ratchet. Because of what Ratchet taught me. Daniel scratched behind the badger's ears. Loyalty matters. Protection matters. Family matters. Doesn't matter if you're big or small, human or animal. What matters is that you show up when it counts. Grandfather Reed smiled. You sound like a young man who learned something important. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the scrubland. Somewhere above them, aliens watched and waited. The world had changed, and everyone knew it now. But on this porch, life continued as it always had. That night, the collective's ruling council reviewed a proposal from their diplomatic corps. With Earth's knowledge of alien life confirmed, perhaps it was time to attempt formal contact. Not covert operations, but honest dialogue between civilizations. The proposal was rejected. Not yet. Let Earth develop further. Let them prove they could handle the knowledge they'd gained. Give them time to reach the stars on their own. But the real reason, the one written in classified reports, was simpler. The collective wasn't ready to face humanity. Not while the memory of the Badger incident remained fresh. Not while they still feared what humans and their bonded creatures might be capable of. Daniel Reed became a symbol without wanting to be one. The boy who survived attempted alien abduction because his honey badger refused to let him be taken. The story spread beyond Earth eventually, carried by other species who traded with the collective. A human child and his loyal companion defeating a military operation. Other civilizations found the story fascinating. Some laughed at the collective's failure. Others took notes. Humanity was clearly more than it seemed. When they reached the stars, they need to be approached with caution and respect. Ratchet lived to be 18 years old, ancient for a honey badger. When the animal finally died peacefully in its sleep, Daniel was there. He buried Ratchet in the scrubland they'd walked together so many times, under a small marker that read simply, family, protector, friend. By then, Daniel was a veterinarian himself, specializing in human-animal bonds. He gave lectures about how those relationships shaped human psychology, made people better, gave them something worth protecting, that he never mentioned aliens in his talks. Didn't need to. Everyone knew the story anyway. And far above Earth, the collective's observation post maintained its watch, waiting for the day when humans would finally leave their planet and enter the galactic community. When that day came, the galaxy would discover what the collective learned the hard way.